Guys. Unfortunately, today my webcam broke down, so maybe the quality of the image is a little bit better, but I'm gonna get myself a new one today. So tomorrow the quality of the image should be back to normal, but hopefully it's not too bad. So I'm really excited to share information about the energy of the day today. And today we're being carried by the energy of three emosh, which I'm going to send you in the chat right now. Three emosh. Um, as always, we're going to just begin with making a little invocation, setting intentions for the cacao, and then we're going to get into the topic. So I'm going to just move my mic away for 1 second for that, and then we'll be back in 30 seconds. All right. Let me readjust the mic. Can you guys still hear me well? Okay, perfect. Awesome. So today we're being carried by the energy of Imosh, which has many different nahuales, from dolphins to frogs to crocodiles. Imosh has all kinds of different animals that represent it. The one connection between all of those animals is they're all connected to the water. And the reason that they're all connected to the water is because Imosh is the energy that represents the water. So, water in the Maya tradition is obviously really sacred. When you take a look at everything in the Maya tradition, you will learn that what is referred to as the energies that create existence is the energies that literally create existence. What do I mean by that? So when the Mayans talk about like the creation, the creators, they refer to a lot of different concepts when they refer to the creators of existence. And a lot of those concepts are concepts of real life. For example, they believe that we would not be able to exist without the earth, because that's true. We would not be able to exist if the earth didn't exist, that we would not be able to exist without the outer space or the solar system. And it's true, if that didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to exist. But in that same way, we wouldn't be able to exist without the plants. We wouldn't be able to exist without the trees. And we wouldn't be able to exist without the air. If you took the air away right now, we would all die really quickly. We would, of course, not be able to exist without the water. If you took the water away, we would all die, and not only us, all the plants, the animals, all of the life in this earth would die if you would take away the water. So in that way, water is so sacred. Water is so important because it's considered to be a giver of life, an enabler of existence, an enabler of life. And when something is that important, it deserves a profound amount of respect, obviously, but also we have to take good care of it and make sure that we never hurt it, because otherwise we'll be like the people of wood. We're going to be self-destructing. If we destroy the water, then we also literally destroy ourselves. So I guess I'm wondering, why then are we destroying the water? Because we actually are destroying the water. And That's a very sad thing. That has been a very big worry in the Maya communities for a really long time already, the way the water is being treated. So, in the honor of today, that is Imosh, it's a good day to think about that, maybe. And it's a good day to think about if there's anything we can do in order to protect the water, in order to respect the water, in order to save the water because we're not doing so well when it comes to the water right now. So I'll tell you a few stories about water and then I'll just move on to the general information on Emosh. So mm, it's so funny. I just realized I was thinking a lot about water today, which is really random. And I wasn't even thinking about it in context of Emosh, just randomly. Um, I was thinking about springs and spring water for some reason today. So, anyways, so well, on the note of springs and spring water, during the challenge, I always like to tell a story of something that happened to my mom once. She met a really interesting person. So in 1995, my dad organized in Guatemala a really amazing meeting where he invited indigenous leaders from the entire continent, from the north to the south, so from Canada all the way to Argentina. He organized, it took a while, but he managed to organize this incredible meeting where leaders from all from indigenous nations in all of those countries flew in. One of the intentions of it was that we were going through the civil war at the time, the genocide, and they wanted to plant the peace and they wanted to just discuss a lot of different things. So, anyways, um, he had leaders fly in from all over the continent, but some of them had never traveled before in their lives or been in an airplane before or even left very remote communities. So in a few cases of some of them, he needed to or they needed to organize for this event to send somebody to literally pick them up so that they don't get lost, so that they actually make it to Guatemala to support them in the journey and everything. And one of those leaders was from Brazil, if I'm not wrong. And he was living very deep within the Amazon rainforest, and he had never left before. So he got picked up. They flew him to Guatemala, and because it was really his first time coming to another place and everything, my dad wanted to make sure he was okay and taken care of. So him specifically, he stayed at my parents' house to make sure that my dad and my mom could just support him and show him around and help him with everything. And my mom always tells this story of something so profound that she never forgot, and she always tells like that as soon as he arrived, she was like showing him around the house. She's like, okay, so this is gonna be your room, here's the kitchen, here's this and that, la la la. And then she was like, and this is the shower. I'm gonna show you how it works, so that like, because in Guatemala sometimes showers are a science. So she's like, I'm gonna show you how to get like the hot water, like where to put the specific thing to get the hot water. So she turns the shower on to show him. And she says that the most interesting thing happened. This guy was absolutely shocked, she said. He was like, "This is your shower? Like, this is how you bathe? This is how you shower?" And she was like, "I mean, yeah, what do you mean? It's a normal shower." Like, I don't know. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's how we shower. That's how we bathe. And he was like, "You're joking. This is how you take showers." And my mom was like, "Yeah, like what's the big deal about it?" And he was like, "That's horrible." And my mom was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "What did you guys do to your water?" And my mom was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Your water, I'm looking at it, it's completely dead. Your water is dead." And he was like, "How can you shower in dead water?" And my mom was like, "What do you mean our water is dead?" And he was like, "Look, touch it, feel it." He was like, "Don't you see your water is dead?" And my mom was like, "Oh, wow." Um, that got her really thinking, like, what does he mean by that? And it's a story that she always told me, especially when I was a child. And we had many conversations about what might have he meant. But the reality of it is, I think, I know what he meant because I had the opportunity also of going on a trip with my family once to Petén here in Guatemala. And during that trip, we had to stay very deep in the Petén jungle, which is absolutely beautiful. And there was this beautiful lagoon in the middle of the jungle, just this like very refreshing, cold, natural body of water that was just there naturally. And every single morning we would go there, we would jump in, and we would just swim around for like an hour or something in this beautiful, amazing lagoon in the middle of the jungle. And a few days into doing this, we all started to notice how we all started to feel so different. We started to feel more energetic, refreshed. Every single time we jumped into the water, it really woke us up. It was such cold, such natural water from a natural water source. And I don't know how to explain it to you. I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably actually experienced this as well. Or if you haven't, hopefully you will, because that is an experience you shouldn't miss out in life. But when you swim in water that comes from springs, when you literally bathe yourself in water that comes like that is really born there, I don't know how to put it into words, but it's a very different experience than the water from your shower. Um, it like heals you. I just don't know how to explain it. It just makes you feel really good after you swim. You feel physically different. It is a where I live in Antigua, there's also some pools. Now I really feel like going to it actually. There's also some pools that come from also spring water, and the water's coming out all the time, and then it goes back into the river. So it's coming in and out, in and out, and it comes directly from the springs. It's super cold, but same thing. Every single time you go there to swim, you feel so much better. Actually, this place is a place I never visit on Sundays because it became famous in my town for this water heals hangovers. So every Sunday when you go there, it's super full of people who are partying the night before, and they're all swimming, and you just jump in the water, swim for like 5-10 minutes, you jump out and your hangover is completely gone. So the water really has this incredible like um you know it's a funny example of how it has those incredible like benefits that I don't know how to explain. And the same thing happens every time I go there. I bring empty bottles and I just go to like where the water's coming out, and I fill them up, and that's the water that I drink. And I try to take as much of it home as I can, because drinking that water also hits different. So I guess in that sense, I kind of understand what this man said to my mom when he said, "Oh my goodness, the water from your shower is dead water." So I think in a way we have killed our water. We have put so many chemicals to it. We have industrialized the process in a way of like how we get access to water. And it was the reason I was thinking so much about water recently is because it was a constant part of the topic that I encountered right now that I visited Raquel in San Martin Jilotepeque. And Raquel is the healer, the herbalist who we work with. Mm, and well, first of all, she waters her herbs and her plants with spring water. But one morning I was in the bus. We hired a local like bus driver that just drives buses, I guess, around the town, usually every day. So we had a group of people coming with us. So we hired one of the local bus drivers to just drive us around all day long. And one of the mornings he asked me, "Are you going to Raquel's house?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, my mom loves Raquel because my mom is super into like herbalism and everything as well." And so because of that, we got to talking. And as I was as he was driving, he was like, you know what? We're gonna do like a really quick detour. I want to show you like the town a little bit since you guys are kind of new. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So he brought us up to like the top of the mountain, to the highest point. He was just showing me around. I was asking him what kind of tree is that? What kind of plant is that? I was asking him about the milpa. Is it like native corn or did GMO already make it here? And he was like, no, it's all native corn here. We really understand the importance of that, la la la. So we're talking a lot about the land, a lot about the plants, a lot about like the community there, all kinds of things like that. And then I take out this bottle, this plastic water bottle that I had with me that I had just bought at a little store like that morning. And I take a sip and somehow, I don't remember exactly what led to the conversation, but he told me like, he was like, oh, you drink that water? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, he's like, doesn't that water make you thirsty? And I was like, what do you mean? Does that water, it's like, isn't the point of water to not be thirsty? And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he was like, it's just that in the community, we have a lot of springs. He was like, look at all of those different mountains. Like every single one of them has spring water. And he's like, I'm going to drive you to the town now because we were driving through the town. And he shows me, he's like, do you see that like just the thing for where water comes out of it? Like a little, how do you call it in English? Just a thing that water comes out of. I don't know how to say the word in English. Yeah, that tap is like a tap, but it was for the town. So people could come there and just get water. Yeah, whatever. So the point is like a fountain, but for drinking, like a drinking water fountain or whatever, something kind of like that. So he He's like, you see that one? He's like, that's for the whole town here. Anybody can come get water there. And that water comes directly from the spring. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's a luxury. I was like, that's amazing that you guys get like spring water. And he told me, yeah, he's like, the water that you're drinking, he's like, of course, I buy it sometimes, like if it's an emergency or everything, but that water is just for wetting your mouth and just having the feeling that you're drinking something. Because really, when you're drinking that water, you're not drinking anything. It's like it makes you more thirsty, actually, because it washes away the minerals from your body. And I was like, that's true, actually, it does wash away the minerals from your body. I used to have this problem where I got super thirsty all the time. So I drank water like I'm a crazy person. And one time I visited my friend and her husband. We were just having a dinner together and I ordered water like 10 times, I think. And then her husband, who's a nutritionist and a healer, and like he's an expert in all kinds of things. He's also a physiotherapist. He's amazing. He told me, I realized, Ulva, you're drinking a lot of water, aren't you? It's like, do you get really thirsty? And I was like, yeah. I have this like insatiable thirst. I keep drinking and drinking and drinking, and I'm always continuing to be thirsty. And he's like, you're making a terrible mistake. If you're super thirsty, you shouldn't keep drinking and drinking water. He was like, you have to put electrolytes into it. He was like, or drink coconut water instead, because that will actually hydrate you. But he said, if you're thirsty and you're just drinking normal water, um, that it has no minerals in it, what you're doing is you're just washing the minerals that are in your body and you're getting even more dehydrated and more thirsty. So I listened to him. I started drinking coconut water and electrolyte water instead, and my thirst problem went away. So in that sense, the bus driver was absolutely right about that. And, just talking to Raquel about how she waters all of her plants with spring water and her telling me, I could never water them just with like tap water because that would be so bad for the herbs and for the medicine. Made me realize, wow, are in agriculture are people really using spring water? But probably not, I'm assuming, most of the time. And also, why are we drinking like this dead water and we're showering in this dead water? And like it just got me thinking, what have we done to water, right? And so I think little by little, we're not protecting water, not to mention that's not the worst thing that's happening to water in this modern world. That's just like the standard thing that's unfortunately happening to water. But we're actually polluting it. We're actually destroying this natural resource, and we're going to run out of water if we're not careful. And that's a very dangerous path to follow. So just a little reminder in this day that represents water of the importance of water for our health, the importance of water for our plants, the importance of water in nature, how sacred water really is, and how medicinal and healing water actually is, and how we should be more aware of it so we stop killing it. And if we can drink spring water instead, that would be really great. But anyways, so let me get into more specifics about emotion. So emotion is the energy of the craziness. What do I mean by that? So emotion people often get called the crazy ones. And it doesn't mean that emotion people are actually crazy, but they are sometimes perceived as if though they were crazy, even though they're not. But that's the thing, the way people perceive you. And if you're emotional, let me just tell you something, get over it. People, it doesn't matter what you do. People will continue to think you're crazy regardless of what you do. So stop worrying about it, because you're just going to suffer in vain if you worry about that or care too deeply about that. In that same way, emotion has to not care so much what others think about them, in the very similar way that we talked about during the day that was Sikin. And as a matter of fact, Sikin and emotion have each other in their chart. So we have two energies that have the exact same problem in the same chart, which only makes that even stronger, right? Tsikin, I don't know if you remember, I told you about the eagles and how they have to spread their wings and fly and let themselves be as they are, but sometimes they put themselves in a cage. That rings very true to emotion. Because A, you have Tsikin in your actual chart, but B, because emotion has a very similar problem. Emotion is water. And water, as we just talked about, when it's coming in nature, flowing naturally, it's pure, it's healing, it's regenerative, it's mineral rich, it's beneficial, it's healthy, it's fresh, it's amazing. But when we do something bad to water, it loses all of its properties. What do I mean by that? Emotion people are like water. And think about water in the ocean, think about water in a river, for example. Water in a river is in a constant state of movement, and as it moves, it makes these movements that allow the water to continue to repurify itself and keep itself vital and keep itself clean. But what happens though, for example, if you just take water and if that water becomes stagnant, like even just think about like a normal glass of water. If I would just leave this water here for the next 20 days, in 20 days from now, I might not, even tomorrow, I wouldn't drink it anymore if I left it out all night. But in 3, 4 days, 5 days, if I saw 5-day-old water, I wouldn't want to drink it, because stagnant water, starts to lose its properties, first of all. I always tell this story of how I was taking a walk in nature once. It was really intense, actually. It was really deep nature. And all of a sudden, one of the people we were walking with accidentally puts their foot somewhere. And he's like, oh my God. And he takes out his foot and it's full of water. So there was this just random pond of water. But this memory to me is so vivid. Every single time I think about this memory, I feel something in my body, because it smelled so bad. I don't know how to explain this smell, but we all were like, oh my God, that smells so terrible. It was just this water that had been sitting there for who knows how long, and it got stinky, it got smelly. um it was not clear anymore, it got really dirty, it was really dark, and so when you have water in movement, that water keeps on purifying itself, it keeps on regenerating itself, it keeps on being clear, it keeps on having its vitality. But when water becomes stagnant, all of a sudden it starts to accumulate dirt. It starts to get not so pure anymore. It starts losing its vitality. It starts losing its properties. It starts getting filled with, yeah, like dirt, like it loses its clearness, all of this. So, in that sense, Imosh people are just like water. If they continue to be in movement, if they continue to work on themselves, to develop themselves, to grow as human beings, to grow as people, then Imosh people are like water. They can regenerate themselves. They preserve their vitality. They preserve their essence. They're more confident, more comfortable with themselves, have better mental health, better emotional health, etc. But if Imosh people like water become stagnant, if they get stuck in life, if they get stuck in the problems, if they stop moving, and by moving, I don't mean physically moving. I'm not saying moving to another city, moving to another country. No, it's not that. Moving internally. What I mean is working on themselves, developing themselves, healing themselves, improving themselves, working on their goals, etc. If they don't do that, they too become like stagnant water. The dirt starts to show up. It's easier for them to feel more emotional distress, to have like lower quality of mental health, to have more problems in life, etc. So, in that sense, Imosh people need to continue to move. They need to continue to work on themselves. They need to continue to develop themselves. Um, it's very important for them to flow like water. Uh, Otherwise, Imosh people is like water is both their strength and their weakness, depending on how they use it. And if you think of water as a strength, it has healing properties. So Imosh people too can be like healers as well. It has like all of this incredible, wonderful, you know, sacred aspects to it. But water, can be so peaceful and it can be so full of richness and vitality. But water too can be destructive. Like think about a tsunami, for example, for instance, right? And so Imosh people, what they have is because they're like water, they're super sensitive people. In the good side, which we'll talk about in a moment, they're spiritually super sensitive, which gives them so many spiritual gifts. On the weakness side, they're emotionally very sensitive. And not that being emotional is a weakness, not at all, not by any means. It's actually a good thing to be able to tap into our emotions, to feel them, to know how to express them, communicate them, etc. But their emotional sensitivity can be a little too much sometimes, even for themselves and also for those around them. So they can be a little too emotionally sensitive. And in that way, if they don't know how to control themselves, they can also be a little bit like a tsunami. If their emotions come out in the wrong way, they can come out in the shape of like a tsunami and be also a little destructive, like a tsunami would be. But that's if they're not regulated, right? That's if they're in their weakness. So, in that sense, they can compare themselves a lot to water. And one of the things they have to work is in balancing themselves because of how sensitive they are. Because Imosh people are so sensitive, as I mentioned, they're super spiritually sensitive too, and they're spiritually developed, which brings us to an interesting topic. In the Maya tradition, it is not believed that we have only 5 senses. In the Maya tradition, it is believed that we have 20 senses. And amongst those senses are some really weird senses, I'm not going to lie. So basically, my dad always taught me, we have 20 different senses. The 5 are the ones we know, like to touch, to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, etc. But the other 15 senses are very interesting because in the very ancient times in the Mayan world, those other 15 senses were considered to be as important as we in the modern day context consider the 5 senses. So, for example, if one of your 5 senses does not work in the modern world, that's considered like a tragedy, right? Like if you would be blind, for example, if you lost your ability to see, that would be for you, that would be something that you would like suffer a lot from and feel really bad about, and society would agree like, oh, poor person, they lost their eyesight, they lost their ability to see. That's how important the senses are, because we know that they connect us to everything. In the Mayan world, the 20 senses were considered as vital, as important to life as the five senses are nowadays. So the fact that we lost 15 of them somewhere down the line is considered a really big tragedy. So for the sake of example, I'm going to give you one simple one that we can all understand. And it's funny because even in the modern day times, we call it the sixth sense, is intuition, right? One of the senses is intuition. So the reason the Mayans believe we lost the other 15 senses is because our modern day society has become so logical, so you know, brain based and scientific based, and only logic, only reason, only like we became pretty materialistic as well. And so the Mayans believe that because of that, we lost the other 15 senses that were more connected to spirituality. They were more connected to emotions. They were more connected to energetic things. That's why I'm giving you a simple example that we can all understand, which is intuition, right? So intuition is a vital thing in our lives. And I was listening to a podcast once, a girl who, and I forgot her name, unfortunately. She had a TED Talk. I think it was a TED Talk, not a podcast. Anyway, I was listening to a TED Talk once, and about this girl who her entire life's work and career is trying to study intuition and to develop your intuition. And the way in which this started for her was because she was on a trip, and she had to go from her hotel to the airport. And so she called a taxi. She had her bags with her and everything was ready. The taxi arrived. She looked at the taxi and she says she had a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. And she kept feeling this feeling of like, don't get in the taxi, don't get in the taxi, don't get in that taxi, don't get in that taxi. But like a lot of us do sometimes with our intuition, she just pushed it down, ignored it. She said, that's ridiculous. Why would I not get in that taxi? There's no logical reason to not get in that taxi. So she got in the taxi. They started driving, and they were in a car accident. Luckily, she survived. She was okay. The taxi driver was okay too. But she asked herself, giving up all your dreams. I learned the definition of a dope fiend. Just somebody who's struggling about it. Something in me knew that this was going to happen. A part of me knew I should not get in that taxi. And she was like, if I would have listened to that part of me, whatever that part of me was, then I wouldn't have been in this car accident. And that story resonated with me a lot because after this, she, was like, I'm never going to not listen to my intuition ever again. I'm going to actually start listening to my intuition more. And she became a super expert in the topic of intuition. So it definitely changed her life. But the reason it resonated is because this exact same thing has happened to me so many times. And I'm sure it has probably also happened to you guys so many times. I have gone and worked with people that I knew was not convenient for me, and something in me was telling me, don't, something's off, something's off. But then my mind was like, no, there's no logical reason to not do it. And then sometime later, exactly, something bad happens and I'm like, I knew it, or I've gone to a place and I know that something's not right. I shouldn't be going there. I say to myself, well, there's no logical reason for that. Then I go to that place and something bad happens and I'm like, I knew it. Why didn't I listen to my intuition? So how many of you have had that experience, right? That you meet a person, that you're in a situation, that you experience something, and everything in you tells you, no, don't do that. Don't go into that relationship. Don't go to that place. Don't do that thing, but you do it anyways. And then your intuition is proved right. So basically, for the Mayans, intuition is as important as eyesight. We would not, for example, be walking down the street and there's a massive hole in the middle of the street And what tells us that? Our eyes tell us that because we're literally looking at the hole. We're not going, I wonder if that hole is really there. Are my eyes actually seeing right? Is that hole really there? I'm not sure. Let me keep walking. And then you fall into the hole and there you're like, I knew it. Well, we would not do that with our literal eyesight. So how come we do it with our intuition, right? And something that's wonderful about it is that since I started paying more attention to it, which I learned the very hard way, by the way, because I kept not paying attention to it. But since I started paying more attention to it, number one, it started to develop even more. It started to happen more often. And I've gotten through so many experiences where I'm like, oh, that was the right choice. I'm like, there was no logical reason for that choice. But then I look at it and I'm like, oh, my intuition was right. And I'm super grateful about that. So intuition is one of the 20 senses, but there's a bunch of other senses in addition to that one. For example, one of them is the ability to have revelations in dreams, is one of the other 20 senses, to do work inside of our dreams and to be able to, like have like heal ourselves inside of our dreams, have like profound spiritual experiences within our dreams. So like intuition, revelations in dreams, some of them are even represented by like different parts of yourself and your body. For example, one of them, but this one is not super deep, but it's just one of them, is how if you close your eyes right now, you still have like a sense for the space around you, or how sometimes you feel like somebody's looking at you and then you turn around and indeed somebody was looking at you. You know how you can see, like you can feel that somebody's looking at you even when you're not looking at them and you don't know, or there's a person standing behind you even though you didn't hear them or didn't actually see them. So that's one of the senses, right? The ability to just perceive the space around us without the need for like our eyes and our ears and whatever, but just the perception. I don't know if there's a name for this. I'm sure there must be some kind of name for it in English, but I wouldn't know what it is. But the perception that we have that doesn't involve our ability to see. Just like that, there's a bunch of different senses. I'm going to stop there because they get weirder and weirder as you go down the line. One of them is like the ability to split yourself in two, for example. So they get really weird at some point. Um, so, but well, now I say that, so I'll explain it a little bit better. My dad always explained me that in the Maya tradition, it is believed that we have something that the Mayans call like your double, and you can utilize your double like on purpose. Is not the ability to split yourself into physically. It's not like you can clone yourself or something like that physically, but it's like your ability to have like a part of you. I don't know how to explain this, right? Like exit you and go do things like separate from you by itself. And so the Mayans always used it. For example, my dad told me there was like this ancient exercise where like if you go to sleep, he said you can send your doubles to run errands for you. I know this sounds really weird, but I'm just telling you part of like what the Mayans do. So you could send your double to like do things for you, not like go to the supermarket, not that kind of errand, but like, solve a conflict with another person for you, for example, So go try to resolve this relationship issue that I'm having with that other person at night, and etc. And so I don't know exactly how that works well enough to describe it perfectly, but as I told you, they do get weirder as you go down the line, but they're very interesting. It's very interesting to think that the Mayans considered all of these things in ancient times literally as important as the ability that we have nowadays to hear or to see. If you wouldn't be able to do those things, it was considered as nowadays. It is considered if you're not able to hear or to see, it's considered a tragic thing, a very sad thing, something that is like an essential part of your life. And so in that sense, the 20 senses are very important. And why is that connected to Emosh people? Because out of all of the 20 Chumilav, out of all the 20 energies in the Cholki calendar, the people who have those senses the most developed naturally are emosh people. It doesn't mean that emosh people are going around splitting themselves in two all the time and whatever because they have them to 100%. What it means is emosh just has those things a little bit more naturally unblocked than the rest of us. Not that the rest of us cannot work on that and unblock it too, but for emotions kind of like innate. They just have like all these weird gifts and they might not even know too much about why they experience certain things they're experiencing, etc., but they do have, all of this very developed spiritual gifts and abilities. And for that reason, Imosh is considered the crazy one. Not, as I mentioned at first, not because they're actually crazy, but similar to what we said during Sikin, for the rest of us, it's really hard to understand the things that we cannot experience, the things that we are not seeing. So if somebody tells you, I'm seeing something, and you're not seeing it, it's hard for you maybe to believe that that person is telling the truth. So as Emosh people, if they are honest about their like life experience, for example, to others, other people might find the way in which they're experiencing life a little strange or a little odd, simply because it's not the norm and because a lot of people simply don't experience those things. So Emosh can be in the same room as you, but they might be feeling the energy way stronger than you. They might be experiencing premonitions as they're there. They might be knowing things and the rest of the people in the room just don't know. But, and so for that reason, some people might be like, oh, that person's a little crazy, that emotion person, but really it's not that they're actually crazy. It's just that they have all these extra senses way more developed. And so they're experiencing life in a like more profound way than the rest of us in that sense, which can be beautiful, but in this modern context, also a little bit overwhelming for them, or something that even makes them feel self-conscious about it at times. Because if they would express themselves very honestly and openly to the rest of the world, people might just think they're crazy, which is why sometimes, it can take them a while to be confident enough to just allow themselves to be as they are, exactly as they are in front of everyone. And that's something that they have to work on, which is why I told you, just get used to it. If people perceive you a little bit oddly, that's okay, Imosh. You don't have to change for people, same as Sikin. You can just experience your own experience of life, and that's okay. You don't have to adapt yourself to fit in or whatever. Because if you do that, then you might actually, like Sikin, go crazy, but for real. And then you might have more mental health issues, feel worse, because it's like you would be denying who you actually are, trying to push down your true selves. And that, as we all know, is not a healthy thing to do, that it can actually bring up emotional, psychological problems. And so don't deny who you are, just live your best life, do your thing, feel your intuition, experience whatever it is you experience it, and just enjoy it, and as I said, try to balance yourselves, try to work on your sensitivity, because sensitivity, as much as it is a gift to be able to be emotionally perceptive, to experience life profoundly, both spiritually and emotionally, that too can also be an overwhelming thing as well, which for Imosh people and other people in the Cholki who have very sensitive experiences of life, it can be an overwhelming thing. So working on finding balance, for example, is really important for them. So why is Imosh experiencing this 20 senses? What's up with this 20 sense thing? I'm going to share with you. Okay. The crate now that everybody will also think I'm crazy. Like Imosh, today is the perfect day for that. No, but I'm going to share with you. This is why people think Imosh are crazy, because they experience and talk about things that are not the norm. So my dad explained to me why the 20 senses exist, right? And my dad, he was crazy, he had like the craziest experiences with his teachers and in life, and as he was studying to become an archich, some things that are hard to believe. Honestly, I've been there with him in some of his experiences, and I would not believe them unless I would have been there, from how crazy some of the things that he was able to experience with his teachers were. So, you know in the Maya tradition, there is a bigger sense for spirituality, for magic, for things that are more energetic. And I want to explain to you why the Mayans so profoundly believe in these things. So, in the Maya tradition, the world is perceived a little bit differently than in the modern day context. You know what? In order to explain to you that, I'm actually just going to tell you my dad's life story. At some point in the challenge, I always tell my dad's life story, and I think this is the right moment to do so. So, my dad was born in Tacana in Guatemala. And for some reason, him and his siblings all got really profound, like all got really deep into, Mayan wisdom. My dad became an Achkich, a Maya spiritual leader. So did my uncle, my dad's brother. And my aunt became one of like the most famous researchers of the Maya tradition in Guatemala and the world as well, which honestly doesn't even make a lot of sense because as you learned from the history lessons we had a couple of days ago, Guatemala is a country that has been very Catholicized, and as a part of both the Spanish invasion, but even post-invasion when we gained our independence, which now you know why I put it in quotation marks if you've been coming every day to the challenge. The church was really trying to impose itself in the people of the country. And so my grandparents, they were just Catholic, that was just it. My dad's parents were just Catholic. And I shared with you during Zikin that that's why they found it so strange when my dad was coming to them and, doing predictions of the future as the good Zikin that he was. But anyways, my dad, for some reason, came out a little crazy, and so did my aunt and my uncle. I don't know why. And when he was young, he was really trying to explore life, and he was very curious and asking himself the big existential questions about like what's the meaning of life, is there more to life than just what we see, like can you develop yourself, la la la, etc. And because of all of these questions that he asked himself, he ended up meeting some friends who introduced him to Buddhism actually. And so he got really deep into Buddhism for a while. He was going in Guatemala City with my mom actually to this place called Ananda Marga or something, I think it was called. And they would do like meditation and yoga and stuff like that. And my dad, not many people know this part of his life, but he was really, really young at the time. And he was doing yoga every day, meditating every day. He was even a yoga teacher, my dad, which is not obviously what he's known for, but that was like the very, very beginning of his journey when he was like, I want to explore my spirituality. And that's the first thing he got introduced to, right? But and I'm not putting like these are his own words, by the way. He always used to say, he always used to tell this story, was not great at that time because he had a really, really, really big spiritual ego. He used to always say he thought he figured out life and existence, and he was like, I'm so much better than everyone else because I already figured everything out.